You wake up every single morning, and before you do almost anything else, you get dressed, not because it's cold in your room, not because you'll die without it. You do it because you're about to be seen. And here's the uncomfortable part. Humans were doing that exact same thing over 70,000 years before we ever needed clothes to survive. This starts in Africa more than 70,000 years ago. The climate was warm. Nobody needed a coat. Nobody was freezing to death without a hide wrapped around them. And yet, in caves along the southern coast of Africa, archaeologists keep finding the same strange thing: humans who were clearly, deliberately decorating their bodies. There are 3 separate pieces of evidence that all point to the same conclusion, and once you hear all 3, it's hard to explain away. The first piece is jewelry. At a site called Blombos Cave on the southern coast of South Africa, archaeologists found small sea snail shells called Nacarius shells, every one of them deliberately pierced with a small hole in the same spot and worn smooth in a pattern that only happens when something is strung on a cord and rubbed against skin or clothing for a long time. These are beads, roughly 75,000 years old. Someone made them, wore them, and clearly cared what they look like. The second piece is pigment. In that same cave, archaeologists found a full processing kit: abalone shells used as mixing bowls, red ochre ground down into fine powder, bone tools used to stir it. About 100,000 years old. This wasn't for hunting. It wasn't for building a fire. Ochre gets used on skin, on objects, on things meant to be looked at. The third piece is timing, and this is the part that changes everything. Humans didn't start migrating out of Africa into the genuinely cold parts of Europe and Asia, but it's the places where you'd actually die without warm clothing until somewhere around 50,000 to 70,000 years ago. And that means the beads and the pigment came first. Body decoration wasn't a byproduct of clothing. It came before clothing had any survival purpose at all. So why would anyone, tens of thousands of years before clothing mattered for staying alive, spend time and effort decorating their body? Scientists think the answer isn't really about the shells or the pigment at all. It's about what wearing them communicated to everyone else. A necklace of matching hand-pierced shells says something without a single word being spoken: that you belong to a group, that you have the time and skill to make something purely decorative, maybe even your status within that group. Red ochre on skin might have marked identity, ritual, even something as simple as "this is who I am," long before language could carry that message as clearly. Here's where it gets stranger. We actually have a rough way to estimate when humans started wearing clothes for warmth, and it has nothing to do with fabric surviving in the ground. Like, fabric doesn't survive that long. It comes from lice. Human head lice and human body lice, the kind that live in clothing, not hair, are genetically almost identical, but body lice had to evolve separately once humans started wearing something they could live in that wasn't hair. By comparing how much their DNA has diverged, scientists can estimate roughly when clothing lice split off and became their own thing. The estimates vary a lot between studies, anywhere from about 70,000 to 170,000 years ago. But even the earliest end of that range still leaves a real gap, a window where humans in Africa were decorating their bodies with shells and pigment before regularly wearing clothing as a survival tool. Think about what you actually did this morning. You probably didn't check the weather and stop there. You picked a shirt. Maybe you thought about a color, a brand, whether it matched something else you own. None of that keeps you warmer. 70,000 years later, you're still doing the exact same thing those people in that cave were doing, using what you put on your body to say something about who you are before you've said a single word. That instinct didn't start with fashion. It might be one of the oldest habits our species has. We like to imagine our ancestors as purely practical, surviving, hunting, staying warm, and nothing else. But the evidence says something different. Long before clothing kept anyone alive, humans were already spending real time and effort making themselves look a certain way to everyone around them. Survival wasn't the whole story. It might not have even been the first chapter. If you want more real history, the stuff that changes how you see your own daily habits, the rest is on the channel. Stay curious.